All right. Today's been a bit of a long day. Also, I think my new monitor is pretty big. Just started looking at it and I'm like, wait a minute. And I think this is just the first time I've painted on it since I set it up. I've been working off of my iPad this entire time, just because of the convenience of it. Oh my gosh, all the noises. Hold on. I think that's my alarm to let me know. Should do a video if I haven't done it yet. YouTube video. I have an alarm that just reminds me, just because I get so busy. All right, we'll just turn it off. No promises there won't be any more noises. Um, yeah. And yesterday I just was so tired yet again. And I think it was just nice to take a bit of a break. Why is it sluggish? Oh, that's why. This brush is unforgiving at this resolution. I've been doing a lot of work off of or on this brush size lately, and it's time for me to change my brush resolutions. I've been working on really high octane um, canvases lately. Oh yeah, I like that. That's pretty good. Okay. Um, but anyway, let's talk about something. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of getting back into the swing of things. Let's talk about something. I've been very interested in watching a lot of people get better at painting in the last several years. I've been teaching quite a lot actually, and as a result, I tend to see a lot of different styles, a lot of different levels, and there has been this consistent thing that I recognize that's been going on, and I usually address it in my classes, and I help people overcome it. But I haven't really been able to define it. I usually would just show people and walk them through it. And only recently have I started to realize that there could be a name or a way of thinking about this that could help you improve your abilities a lot more. And the working name for this this way of helping people, at least for now, until I come up with a better name, is basically lazy painting. And I think the title is going to be very clickbaity if I say "Don't be a lazy painter," and I might even just in the title say "clickbait" title because I do think it is very clickbaity. Because what I'm not saying is that uh, this person who is a quote unquote lazy painter shows no effort and doesn't really make an attempt to try to paint. It's less about that. It's more about what I'm about to talk about now, which is this idea of like not taking your time with what you're painting and allowing there to be a little bit more thought and melody in your approach. This is what I mean by being lazy. There's this kind of thing that's been happening when I've been teaching my sons how to put together some furniture and do just basic, chores, what have you, when we're moving into this place. And one of the things I said a couple times already, and through building furniture, I was able to teach my son. I explained to him this saying. The saying goes, "Measure twice, cut once." I'm sure many of you guys have heard this. And the premise behind measure twice, cut once is the idea that you want to make sure before you make a cut in, let's say you're building like a desk or something, and you want to make sure before you make any cut that you've measured it and double measured it and made entirely sure that the cut you're about to do is the right one. Because sometimes once you've made the cut, then there's no going back a lot of times. And in the context of furniture building, if you don't kind of like look at the rules or not the rules, but the instructions well, you will almost certainly have to go back and disassemble and reassemble for the mistake you made because you didn't double check, triple check. And me and my son actually did that a couple of times, and I was explaining to him, see, this is exactly why we should have triple checked, even measured 3 times, then screw in the nail, you know? And I think with art and this idea of don't be a lazy painter, it's the same premise. And what I don't want to say here, because I think this could be misunderstood, is that you should make sure that every stroke is perfect. This is not what I'm trying to get at. I think a lot of you who might not have a lot of the skills you need to be able to even recognize you've made a bad measurement, that this is not kind of the take that I want you to have, but rather that you should at least understand what you've just done and why you did it, so that you can try to backwards engineer and basically disassemble and reassemble later. It's just essentially using that same hypothetical or metaphor in this instance. So let me give you an example of what this looks like in art. So a lot of times people will do a couple of things. They will draw a shape, or let me show you a different, more effective example. People will sometimes sketch in a shape using lots of lines, right? And the problem that I have with this is that there's just so much guessing, and there's so much just uncertainty in this line art that you've created, that you weren't being thoughtful with any meaningful agenda on any of these strokes. And so it's really hard to learn from, because you were kind of just guessing the entire time, hoping that something will come to light. And this to me is what I mean by being lazy. Not that you haven't showed up to do the work. You're showing up to do the work. You're not procrastinating, you know, but you're not trying to better yourself, because this is what will probably happen if you try to draw a better line. Like, it's just gonna not be accurate. It's gonna be lumps everywhere. And although this looks worse potentially in a lot of ways, because it's like, although it's not a lot of little guesses, it's a lot of real attempts. And what can happen with real attempts is that it recognizes your inefficiencies and your deficiencies, you know? And you can see them plain as day. You can be like, oh my God, I do not know how to draw a curve from this angle. Like, every time I do, like, it's the tail of it gets really wobbly. Now, you might not care to fix that. You might just be like, well, look, I'll just draw half circle, and then I'll just turn my canvas and do another one until I get like a full circle. You know what I mean? That's fine. But like, at least you're like realizing why you're doing that, even if it's still not perfect, even if it's still not effective. Because then you could be like, well, let me just practice drawing perfect circles. That seems like the next appropriate step, is to train how to draw circles in general, you know, and draw corners of circles effectively at any given moment, you know, having better curves, essentially. And this, to me, is one of the biggest things that one can do to improve the lack of laziness. Another good example in the world of painting, I see this quite a bit actually. People will, you know, draw like, okay, so if you look at my hands, they feel like there's some purpose, there's some intentionality, because I'm trying to convey a very specific shape. And so there is some intention here, and I will address some of the shortcomings of what I didn't do well later, because I know what I did and I know what I'm using this for. I don't need it to be perfect yet. Perhaps I can even refine that more And in fact, I'm almost certain I will eventually. But right now, it's not on my bingo card. But what I will see is not this, where people will change and vary their brush sizes to quantify the different measurements of different things that they're drawing. They're not accounting for size variation. This is something that people do not do. They tend to do something like this, where this is where it becomes lazy again. They will have one big brush size, and instead of shrinking the brush or changing the brush size to kind of warrant the fingers, they will now draw chunky fingers. And if they're not doing something super stylized, this can tend to come off looking, wrong. And then they draw the arm, and they just stay in this same brush size the entire time, not accounting for new shapes. They're drawing an ear, and the ears are now big because they're just staying with the same brush size. This is lazy. Again, they are showing up to do the work, so that is not what I'm saying they're being lazy about. It's the effectiveness of laying in more accurate shapes and more interesting patterns. Excuse me, I'm so tired. Versus trying to understand, like look how I'm changing the brush size. Trying to understand what is a good way to construct a rounded corner at different, curvatures. So a bigger brush will absolutely give you a much rounder curve with less effort than a smaller brush. You can get a much sharper curve with less effort. And if you need to fill all this in, then you can use a bigger brush to do that. Right? This is the difference. Most young artists will just stick with the same brush to do both kinds of corners, and there is absolutely a difference. This still is rounded more than it needs to be. So this is all I want you guys to keep an eye out for, right? Try not to be a lazy painter. So you can see I'm constructing a shape here, but the corner of this shape I need to sharpen, so I just shrink my brush size. So I have a lot more finesse. And this is why having my brushes on a hotkey is like a godsend. It's an effective tool. 100%. Anyway, I am going to continue painting this, talking more about this type of stuff because this is less of a tutorial. It's more of a commentary, and to kind of give you guys a heads up on something that you guys all might be doing on accident, But let's talk about like the other aspect of what it means to be, like when you do hear the term lazy in general. Let's actually talk about that, and even in the context that I think it's normally understood under, right? Like of like somebody who doesn't do work. You know what I mean? And a couple things that I think could help you understand why, laziness is your worst enemy. But it's okay to also just take breaks. There's nothing wrong with like chilling. Truly, there's nothing wrong with taking breaks. And there's nothing wrong with being complacent, or a better word, content. Genuinely, I actually do not think there's anything wrong with these things. But before we do, let's give this some color just off the rip. Ooh, I didn't mean to do color lookup, but let's see what color lookup can give us to start with. Nothing that I will want to really use. Let's just keep it there though. Let's not worry about it too much. Let's get aggressive with it. I did this thing the other day that I really liked where I was using gradient map pretty aggressively. I definitely need to take a nap. Oh yeah, that seems fun. Can't see half of what I'm doing here. It's just lost behind this interface. Yeah, let's just start with something crazy like this. I don't care. Let's give it a shot. See what happens. Ooh. And then let's just merge all this together. And then let's, ooh, I like this kind of perps. So I was building bunk beds for my kids, and my wife urged me to build the other beds because we had all the mattresses, but now we didn't have any bed frames. And I was already really tired from all the stuff I've been doing for the last few days, several days of just building stuff, just doing running errands, and also trying to work. But yeah, I think we need to build them. So I start to get the tools ready. I forget exactly when I think we just got done eating. I forget exactly. And I was like, okay, we got to start building the beds. And then my son said to me, do we have to do it now? Can we do it tomorrow? And I looked at him and I said, the feeling that you're feeling right now, son, is laziness. Yeah, and I was saying it in a joking way. I wasn't trying to be hard on him. I was like, that feeling that you have right now is you wanting to be lazy. And it's okay because we're tired. We've been doing a lot lately. And honestly, I'm not trying to give him a hard time about this. I just wanted to teach him something. And when the thing that I wanted to teach him was not to be lazy. Like that's not what I'm trying to get at. But what I told him was, I say, your laziness though has to be overridden by your sense of duty. And you're the big brother to your little brothers, and they need their bunk bed. This is why I'm doing it, and you're going to help me do it, and we're going to do it together. We're going to do it fast. We do it together. Instead of taking a few hours, we're going to be able to take an hour and a half. And because it's our duty as the elders to do this for them, so let your sense of duty override your laziness. And he's all right. And he's a good kid. He didn't give me a hard time. He didn't fight back. And as soon as we start, it is just like anything. I think it's the same thing when I teach my classes a lot of times. I said, just get started, right? Because a lot of times, once you start to get started, you just start doing it. Even today, I didn't really want to build the couches, but I felt like, shoot, if we don't do it today, then we have to do it for tomorrow. And honestly, I want my family to be able to sit in the couch. We have it here. I got a little bit caught up with some of the work. I still have a lot of work to do, but I'll just do it later. And then once the couches are built, then my family can sit down and feel comfortable. And that'll be nice for all of them. The sense of duty. And I will say for a fact that if I decided not to do them today, I think even my wife was saying, like, don't worry. Like she already recognizes that I am really tired. Today I had to bring them up the stairs with I was even making fun of the delivery people in a fun way. I wasn't really trying to give anybody a hard time. Anyway, I'm just again just saying, oh, they're lazy. we got the lazy delivery guys. They don't want to take it up 3 flights of stairs. And the reality is like nobody wants to take it up 3 flights of stairs. And I don't think they get paid enough to do that anyway, to be honest. And so I absolutely didn't get mad about that. It's just it just sucks to do it. Nobody wants to do it, even if you're being paid to do it, right? And so it's just funny to me. But yeah, I did that today, and then we went car shopping, and that took the entire day. Truly, because we want to make sure we're going to spend a lot of money. We're going to make sure we want to get something that we actually need and will use and feel good about, and that will be comfortable, and that just takes time. perfect car isn't just there with all the right things you want all the time, you know? There's always going to be some compromise. So it's worth looking at, unless you have all the money in the world, right? Then obviously you probably have more options, but that's not us. And so for me, telling my son, like, yeah, this is our duty, you know, he's a good kid. He hears those words and the argument that I lay out, right? Like that it's our duty, this is our responsibility to our family. I know it hits him well because that's the kind of stuff that makes sense to me, and he's a lot like me. And so, yeah, again, no arguments, no pushback, nothing. And even today, he was asking me, he's like, "Hey, do you need help? Like, can you want me to do something?" And I was telling him, like, I don't really know. I don't think so. Because a lot of stuff that was just too heavy. I just knew he just wouldn't be able to do it really well. And it's not anything that bothers me. It's just the facts of the case. But he was able to help his mom, like do some of the grocery stuff. But he wanted to help me. He was like, I see my dad fulfilling his duty. I can tell that he wanted to help out. So how does this all kind of attach to art? Well, I mean, think about it. I want to be one of the greatest concept artists, illustrators that ever existed, right? If this is my goal, let's just say, I want to stay employed. I want to have good income. I want to make sure that I am always sought after for the kind of stuff that I am able to do. Then I have to be able to demonstrate that, right? I have to be able to provide a value that nobody else can get, like nobody can get anywhere else except from me, you know? Now, obviously, that's just not entirely possible. There's always going to be somebody else. I think that that's true. Even for my skills, I believe that there's always going to be someone else. Even as an educator, even as a YouTuber or artist, like I always think that there are people that I absolutely think can do what I do, just as good, if not better, and that's okay because I also know there's not a lot of them. And whenever I think about what this goal is, then think about like why I do it. It's because I want to make sure that I fulfill my duties as a parent, as a husband, you know. Then the duty to do this is clear from there, and then the reality of what I ought to do in this instance. Hold on, I'm trying to rationalize some of these decisions I'm making on this painting. This is a great example of I should have done a better job from the start. I like the silhouette a lot though, so maybe there's something wrong with the way I'm approaching it now. Yeah, let me focus on here just for a second. Oh yeah, I think I have an idea what I'll do. It's because the hands are open. I need to like make him actually be doing something with his hands. Maybe, yeah, that seems more appropriate. And then maybe I can exaggerate. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's see how this will come out. Now I just need to do something more interesting with the legs. Um, so then, actually, I think the leg might have been fine. I'll come back to legs once it makes sense to. Yeah, so then my duty as an artist becomes more clear because if I am telling myself that I need to accomplish these types of goals for myself to stay relevant and what have you, then it's like obvious that why I studied anatomy and perspective and character design, and I mean all of these things. Just name all the things you ought to be doing to stay relevant. And you start to look at kind of my trajectory in my career and all the decisions I've made throughout that. Then it becomes so obvious, like why I did even half the things that I did to become this person that I am today, you know? And so if you think about it from the conventional sense of the word lazy, right? Like this is typically where I think that commentary might make sense now in that context, even though that's not where I started. I started with more of just like the actual approach painting, which I still think is more important to take away from this video. But I thought I would segue into this more conventional thought of laziness, because honestly, you know, whenever you hear these types of like work, push type gurus, their heart is usually in the right place, but the sentiment kind of lacks empathy a lot of times of people's circumstances. Like a lot of people have a lot of challenges in their life. So I don't necessarily want to make it seem like if you don't have this grit, then you're hopeless. I actually know quite a few people who I've seen have these challenges in their life and overcome them, but not in the conventional way. There's always something else that they did that I felt that worked. That I just could never give them that advice because it's just not the person I am. Not that I didn't want to help, not that I couldn't tell them something that would be helpful. It was literally, I don't like, there's just at some point I just can't, I can't give you that advice because I am not, for lack of better term, you know, a specialist or somebody who is on the level of like a therapist or a psychiatrist or somebody who could help on more than just the basic of showing up, waking up, doing the work type vibes, and giving you some practical insight on that. I have absolutely helped people who were, and I've been complimented as much. I remember I had one student tell me that because they did have a therapist, and that taking my courses, that they felt that they really got more out of that than talking with therapists. And I thought that was nice, but I, even in that context, was like, I'm just able to kind of help guide you on drawing more. And if that just helped you overcome some of these feelings, then great. But obviously some of these deeper traumas and these deeper emotions, I cannot, I'm not, I'm not qualified to be able to help there. And I just can't even begin to pretend to be qualified. Maybe if I would spend the time and learn that kind of stuff, maybe I could change that, but that's just not the case right now. But I have been told that my methods can sometimes really break people free from that. And I will say that if I can help in that regard, I will absolutely help as best I can with what I know and what I can say. I'm parched. Give me a second. I can feel the dryness in my throat. That's real bad. But one thing that I felt was really useful during classes to help people overcome quote unquote laziness of any kind, whether it's the way that they painted, whether it was genuine, they don't paint at all because they just didn't do the work, is to acknowledge that I don't think it's a matter of just their lack of willpower and discipline. These are symptoms, like, or these are the acts of somebody who's a little bit more balanced, to be a lot more disciplined. So usually the tools that I would employ on somebody to help them overcome these types of challenges quite literally is to see why they didn't do the work. What happened? Walk me through it. And usually what will end up happening is that they'll walk me through their day to day, and they'll walk me through like their life problems. And all I do is just logically walk them through how that's just doesn't make any sense, you know? Like why you would do this way, or why would you approach it this way? Not that what they are that would not that what they are experiencing isn't happening. That is not what I'm doing. I acknowledge it and validate what they're experiencing. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense with their goals, why they think that this is an actual deterrent. I remember one of my close friends, in fact, the very person that inspired me to do these videos in the first place, again, like YouTube, my buddy Rob, who passed away. One thing that he told me a lot was that he just didn't have time to do stuff. And he was just shocked that I had so much time to find to do personal work. And he would always ask me, like, how the heck do you do that? Like, how do you find time to do personal work here and there? And I said, oh, there's always time. There's absolutely time as long as you make time for it. Make no mistake. And he was like, no, I trust me, man. I have no time between me and the wife and then work. Like, it's just, like, I got no time. And this is before he had any kids. And I was like, okay, man, like, if you don't have time, then I guess you don't have time. I don't know. I don't know what you're doing with your day to day. But I do believe you have more time than you realize. And he was like, nah, I just have no time. Fast forward, he has his first kid. And I think like several months into it, he messages me. And we get it kind of in a text thread. And he's just like, AJ, I had so much time before. I can't believe it. I can't believe that I felt like I had no time. Because now I actually feel what you've been trying to tell me that I had before, like I don't have anymore. Like I feel I have no time whatsoever at all. It is crazy to me that I thought I didn't have time. And I was like, yeah, man, I get it. Like kids take a lot of your time. But you still have time, even with the kid. Trust me. And this time he did. He believed me. He's like, okay. And he did make time. And he ended up making a school for himself, like for hand textured 3D modeling. It's called Brush Forge. I'm not sure if it's still up and running. I don't remember the details of that. I know it was pretty successful though. And he did a couple other things. And he started doing more personal work. Because now he had time, and he realized he had time, and he felt fortunate for it, you know? And what's beautiful about this is that I see this all the time. I see people creating rationale for a lot of their bad habits, you know? And I always tell people, you know, people love to hear good news about their bad habits or their worst assumptions. If there's something that will tell you that the world is the way that it is and it justifies everything and all things that you're dealing with, then it's going to be true. It's just going to be believable, and you're going to have a hard time breaking free from that, you know? Even if it is true, even if everything that you believe about the world and all the stuff that gets in your way, I tend to tell people like, yeah, absolutely, that's probably real. But I walk them through like a logical kind of step through to explain to them that a lot of these things, even when you break it down, and I try to steel man their points. So even if you break it down at its most purest point, the thing that I think is really important to remember is that it's still at odds with what you're trying to do here, like what your goals are. And even though you believe that these things are really happening and you're falling into these certain challenges, man, it's still a problem, you know? Like again, like my buddy was like, "Hey, I don't have time." So he believed it and he genuinely didn't have time, and because of that, he didn't make time. He just felt like there wasn't any. And then once he realized he didn't really have that much time, or at least the opposite, he had way more time because he felt like his time was truly gone now with his children. Not in a bad way. He just realized like he's spending so much time with his children because he loves them. Um, that I mean, shoot, he just when he did have them, he's like, no, no, no. This time I'm going to make time. There is time. I am going to make time, and then he made time, which I do believe he had less time now that he had children. I actually agree with that. But yet he found more time when he had children versus when he had no children. So anyway, we went to the bank today to talk with some folks, and there's a nice young lady who was helping us out. And we were talking about traveling and kids and stuff, and my wife made a comment about how a lot of parents feel like they can't travel once they have kids, and we've like moved several times in the last few years, proving that you could totally move with kids. And the lady was like, "Yeah, you're right. Like my husband, I didn't move around a lot when I was a kid, but my husband, his family moved all the time, and he's great." I was like, "Yeah, I mean, everything can work out. You just gotta be smart about it." And so I think when it comes back to, do you want to commit to certain things, and you want to do the thing that you say you want to do. You want to be this artist. You want to do that thing. You want to try to accomplish this goal. You want to try to accomplish that goal. You have to realize at the end of the day that that's your duty to then make it happen, to do the things you got to do, you know? And why do you have this duty? What is the duty? What's the driving force? And I feel that quite a few of my contemporaries, um, I think a lot of us are like religiously online more so than we ought to be. And it's really painting a picture that makes us feel a lot more disconnected, a lot more um, aggressively distracted in all the worst ways. That I don't think that it's really helpful to our overall ability to stay more productive. And so for me, okay, I'm gonna zoom in on this. This screen's massive, so I actually realized I might have been zoomed out quite often during this entire painting. Um, I'm gonna just keep it zoomed in so you guys can just look at it while I finish this out. Yeah, so me, like, okay, just so you know that like this right here, like this size that you guys are seeing on my screen, which might be small on your guys' screen, is like 8.5 by 11, like a print paper. So my new screen's like pretty massive. So I only really need like this much space to kind of like see my painting when I zoom out. But this is like a poster. It's actually cool to see it this big on my screen. Um, but yeah, I would say whatever you feel is your obligation to yourself, what you think you need to do, it's pretty important to kind of lay that groundwork to tell yourself and convince yourself of these types of things, so that way you call to action. And in terms of the earlier comments about lazy painting, yeah, I think that's part of it. You gotta like understand if you just loosely and aggressively just sketching and etching without any real thought, I think that's fine. And there's time and place for that. But if you are actively trying to get better, you should recognize when that's okay and when you're trying to learn. Like the difference between just sketching for the sake of just roughing it in because it's fun to noodle versus, okay, I'm trying to learn anatomy here, or I'm trying to learn colors, or I'm trying to learn XYZ, I need to kind of be thoughtful. And it's boring, and it kind of spits in the face of the idea of what an artist ought to be like, but it is what makes the great great. And no one that's listening now can't make that happen. Like that is not the case. That if you're listening to me talk right now and you feel like I can never be this great artist, that's just not true. You can absolutely not only become a great artist, you could even be better than me. In fact, I have met so many people who said, oh, I listened to your videos back in the day, or I watched your tutorials, or I listened to this, that are now like art directors, lead concept artists, legends in their own right. I was messaging my buddy, who was one of my very first students I ever had, and yeah, he's doing great. He's doing really good at this company, yeah. And I was very proud of him. I even wrote him. I was like, yeah, I'm proud of you, dude. Um, Doing amazing stuff. And so I see it all the time. And I'm just not convinced that people can't make this happen for themselves. It's really about your duty to yourself. Are you putting in the time and effort ultimately? And then letting people know that you have this quality of work that ought to be seen. So anyway, I'm tired. Gonna go to bed now. Or actually, no, I'm gonna do a little bit more work, probably hang out with the wife, watch some shows, and then go to bed. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. See you in the next video.